Today's session is going to be a basic training session for Sanako Connect. We'll be getting started on how to use the solution. So the training agenda for today is an overview of Sanako Connect, what the teacher sees, and what the students see when using Sanako Connect. And then we will also explore a basic lesson flows for both synchronous and asynchronous lessons, which means that you can have both real-time lessons with your students, or you can create exercises that your students complete on their own time. We'll take a look at that later. And then we will take a more hands-on approach with Sanako Connect and see what's what. We'll explore the session dashboard. I'll explain what sessions are. We'll be creating a session, and then we'll enter a session as a teacher. We'll invite a few students in and take a look at the synchronous communication options there. Afterwards, we'll be managing the session, so we'll assign students into groups and pairs. Then we'll move on and create and share some exercises with our students. And we'll take a look at how the students see the exercises, and then we'll take a look at student submissions, how to give feedback to our students, and finally we'll end the session. We'll focus on the more basic features of Connect for this session. Please feel free to ask questions at any point. You can also ask the questions through the chat function. My colleague Tu will be answering those, and she will let me know if there's a general question that I need to answer during this webinar. Okay, let's have a brief overview of Sanako Connect. Let's first see what the teachers see when they log into the system. So the teachers see what is called a session dashboard. This is where the teachers create and edit their sessions. These sessions are like meetings in Zoom, for example. So this view is pretty familiar to you if you've used one of these online communication tools. From this view, we'll be able to enter sessions as a teacher and also access session information. When we enter a session, this is what we see as a teacher. This is the session view. Here we will be able to manage our students, so put them into groups or pairs, communicate with our students. We can create and share exercises, and once the students have completed their exercises, we'll be able to review them as well. For our students, this is what they see. Currently, in this picture, this student has an exercise opened in the middle of the screen. At all times, your students will be able to send messages to the teacher. They can access the chat and access all the files and exercises that you've shared as a teacher. So the views are a little bit different for the teacher and the student. For the students, they only see what the teacher wants them to see at any specific moment. So the teacher is completely in charge of the session. Next up is the basic lesson flow for synchronous lessons. So this means real-time sessions with your students. So first, the teacher would create a session and enter the session. Then they would create some exercises for their students in beforehand. When they are ready, they would share the session URL with their students. This can be done through email or a learning management system, for example. When it's time for the session, students just click on the link and enter the session. The teacher then shares the exercises in the order they want, and students complete the exercises and teacher reviews the exercises. That's the basic lesson flow for synchronous lessons. Connect also has the ability to have asynchronous lessons, which means that the teacher isn't online at the same time as the students. The lesson flow for asynchronous lessons is as follows. First, the teacher again creates a session. Then they create the exercises they want their students to complete during the session. And then they share the exercises with their students. Afterwards, they share the login URL with their students, again through email or a learning management system. Students access the session when they have the time. As a teacher, you don't have to be present when you're having an asynchronous session. Your students can still access everything that you have shared, and they can complete and submit the exercises to you for review. And the final step here is when the teacher has the time, they review the students' submissions. Okay, the next step in this training session is taking a more hands-on approach with Sanako Connect. Does anyone have any questions at this point? Or shall we just move on and start using the solution? I think we have a question in the chat, or at least a comment there. Okay, so far so good. That sounds good. Okay, let's access Sanako Connect. For the European server, okay, we have someone coming in. One moment. Welcome to the session, Elizabeth. Okay, we just logged in to Sanako Connect. Let's do that again. So we're going to access the European server. We're going to be logging in as a teacher. So we just click on the login button and log ourselves in. And we arrive at the session dashboard. Just like I told you previously, this is very much like in Zoom, where you arrange your meetings in beforehand. Here, we just create a session, and after we've created that session, our students will be able to access it. So to create a new session, we will click on this green button here. First, we're going to give the session a name. This is something our students will see when they enter a session, so it's better to have something descriptive here. For example, this is going to be a basic training session. Now, this is all that we have to do in order to create a new session. In the future, when you've used Sanako Connect for a little bit more, you might want to include instructions for your students. Whatever you type here, your students will see when they enter the session. So I'll just type here, welcome to the session. You will see it when we have a student entering the session. So now I click on create, and the basic training session that we just created is accessible right here. We're going to be entering that session as a teacher, but before we do, I'm going to do a little thing that's a bit more advanced. So I have some exercise templates ready. You don't have to pay any mind to this part. I'm just saving some time, and I have some pre-made exercises ready. Okay, now we're back in the session view, and we have the session we created called the basic training session. I will just access it as a teacher now. Since I've logged in to Connect, the system knows that I'm the teacher. I click on this green button right here to join the session. Okay, it's going to ask us to choose our microphone. We can see if the microphone is working from these bars right here. Okay, it seems to be working. Now we've entered the session, and this is the session view. When our students join the session, we will see them right here in the middle. I'm going to be bringing in 2 students now. I'm going to do it on the same computer so you see what it looks like when a student joins the session. So all we need to do is we share this link with our students. Let's say I just emailed the link to my students. And now one of the students clicks on the link that I shared previously. The students are greeted with this message: "Hi, welcome to basic training session. What is your name?" Now the students don't have any accounts in the system, so all they have to do is enter their name when they enter the session. Let's have this one as Alexis student 1. And then we click on continue. Now the most important part of students entering a session is that they have to allow the use of their microphone. So we click on allow here. And once again, we choose a microphone or an audio input device. And we are ready to go. This is the student view now. Let's go back to the teacher view and see what has changed. Okay, we now have 1 student in the session. I'll bring in another student just so we have 2. Once again, another student enters, clicks on the link, and enters their name. So this one is Alexis student 2. And we're using this microphone here. Okay. Now we're back at the teacher view. We now have 2 students in this session. Okay, let's take a look at the communication options available to us. This is a real-time session, so we want to be able to speak to our students or communicate with them through the chat, for example. At the top right-hand corner, we have a button called Speak to Class. If we click on this as a teacher, the system will transmit our voice to all the students in this session. Currently, both of the students are on the same computer as I am, so if I click on this button, it will create unwanted noise, but I will just click on it so we'll see the system forming the connections between us and our students. Okay, as you saw, a mark appeared below the students telling us that the connection has been made. So the students will hear our voice when we speak to them. The other options we have available here are we can share our webcam or share our screen. While we are using the webcam or screen sharing functions, our voice is also being transmitted to our students, so we can continue giving them instructions. We can also toggle on the chat, which means that all the students have all the students can write messages into the chat. As a teacher, we can also disable the chat. Okay, we have another teacher coming in. Okay, so what we've just gone through is the speak to class function, which allows us as a teacher to transmit our voice to all the students in the classroom. We can also use our webcam or share our screen. And while using either the webcam or screen sharing functions, our voice is transmitted to our students as well. Now the students are not inside a group at the moment, so let's take a look at what we can do with individual students. If we click next to an individual student's icon, this menu opens up. When the students are not inside a group, we can listen to what they are doing, or we can, for example, speak with this individual student. It will create a one-way communication between the teacher and the student. We can also send students direct messages. The students are also able to send these direct messages to us at any point. Now let's create some groups so we can have, for example, a pair discussion. If you want to create new groups, there's an easy button right here called New Group. So if I click on that, it starts to create new groups. We can create as many as we want. And then if we click on an individual student, we can choose the Move To option and move students to a corresponding group. For example, Group A or B right here. We can also let the system create the groups for us. So if we have, for example, 20 students and we want to create a pair discussion, to save time, we would use the so-called split function right here. So I'm going to click on that and choose groups of 2. The system automatically assigns the students into groups, but as a teacher, we are free to move the students around and create any kind of group we want. When we click on Create Groups, the system automatically creates as many groups as are needed and assigns the students into corresponding groups. As we can see here, Alexis Student 1 and Alexis Student 2 are both in Group A at the moment. Now, since these students are in a group, we can no longer speak with individual students or listen to what an individual student is doing. Instead, if we click on Group A and turn the audio on, which connects these two students, we can speak with this student group and they can speak back to us. So it's two-way communication when we're speaking with a group. Unlike the speak to class function, which is one-way communication. It only transmits the teacher's voice to all the students and your students won't be able to interrupt you. But when you're using the speak with group option, your students will be able to speak back to you. In a sense, you will be taking part in this group as a teacher if you click on this option. You can also listen in on what the group is currently doing discreetly, so it's like audio monitoring in a sense. For a brief moment, I will enable the live audio. Like I said earlier, the students are on the same computer as I am, so unfortunately we won't be able to test the audio options here. But I will click the group audio on, and you will see the system making the connection between these two students. A little check mark appeared here. That means that the students are connected with each other. I'll do it again so you can see it. Okay, since we're using Connect online, most of the things don't happen instantaneously. You have to wait a little while before the connection has been made. But you can see it from the check marks that appear below the students that the connection has been made. Now let's say we have additional groups. Let's say we have 10 groups. We don't want to go through all of them individually and click on the live audio. We want the students to be able to hear each other at the same time. So we can use these two buttons right here. We can enable the audio for all groups, which connects each student within their group. And we can also disable it if we want to give the students' instructions and want to be sure that the students aren't speaking at the same time. Okay, then let's move on to exercises. We're going to be creating a really simple exercise and sharing that with our students. So we click on the Exercises tab right here. To start off, we click on the plus New Exercise button. Again, all we need to do is to give the exercise a name. To keep things simple, let's just create a simple recorder exercise. So how do we do that? We click on the plus sign next to this editor. It opens up this menu. It allows us as the teacher to create exercises from parts. Now we have two kinds of parts available to us. We can use all of them in one exercise if we want. But we have content and then we have tasks. This content is something like source files or instructions for the students, and tasks are something that the students complete. I encourage you to try out the different task types and content types yourself and see what you can come up with. But let's create a really simple exercise. I want my students to record themselves telling me what they did over the weekend. So first I want to add instructions. So I will add text-based instructions in this case. So I will click on Add Text. It added that part right here. And then we're just going to add a simple recorder here. Let's close this exercise. Okay, we are editing the exercise. This is not what the students will see. This is tools for the teacher to create an exercise. So let's write our instructions here for our students. Use the recorder below to tell me what you did over the weekend. Okay, that's our text-based instructions right there. Below, we have the simple recorder. We have a bunch of options here, but we don't have to touch anything for this exercise. The options here, we can define the maximum recording length if we don't want to receive 20-minute long recordings from our students, for example. We can just set it to be, for example, 10 minutes if we want. Because we're going to, this exercise is going to be an individual exercise, which means the students aren't going to be completing them as a group. We don't have to choose this record group audio option below. But if we do choose this option, the recorder will record everything the students hear or everyone the student is connected to at that time. It's very useful, for example, creating exercises where you as a teacher ask questions from your students and they record their response. In that case, it would also record your voice as the teacher, so you could easily keep track of what the students are replying to. But we are done with this exercise. So we've written some instructions for our students, and then we've added a recorder. Now let's click on the preview to see what the exercise looks like. It's very plain and very simple. It gives our students the instructions to use the recorder below to tell me what you did over the weekend. Okay, so we click on Save, and then we want to make this exercise available to our students. So we click on the exercise menu right here. There's an arrow, and we click on Share to Session. And let's go back to the class view as a teacher. Okay, now our students have received the exercise. They receive a notification that they have a new exercise available. And they can just open the exercise from the menu and click on Start. Now let's go quickly back to the teacher view and see what's going on at that end. As a teacher, we now see that, okay, Alex's student has opened the exercise already. So let's complete the exercise as a student here. We're going to be using this recorder to tell the teacher what we did over the weekend. Of course, we will be using the target language here because we are having a language lesson. And when we are done as a student, we just click on Stop. We can easily listen to what we just recorded. And if we're satisfied with the recording, we'll just click on Submit to send it back to the teacher for reviewing. After I clicked on Submit as a student, we received this notification. You've submitted this exercise. So our students know that they've completed the exercise. Now, as a teacher, we can go to the Submissions tab to see what our students have done. So this is the exercise we shared. There's one next to it telling us that we have one submission from one student. If we click on that student, we can easily listen to what they recorded right here in the system. So we click on Play. We're going to be using this recorder to tell the teacher. Okay, you can probably hear the audio, but I can. We can easily review it right here, or we can click this button to download the student recordings and store them elsewhere if needed. But let's assign some feedback to this particular student. I'm going to tell them that they did very well, and then I'm going to click on Save Feedback. It immediately transfers the feedback to the student end. So let's click that. As a teacher, we receive a notification about our feedback. Let's go take a look at the student end. And the students receive this notification. It's feedback from the teacher. Well done. I'm going to be, I'll share some of these pre-made exercises as well with my students. And like I told you earlier, this session could very well be an asynchronous lesson where we as a teacher wouldn't be present in the session. It means our students can log in whenever they have the time and they can access all the exercises that we have shared as a teacher. So once these exercises are shared, all the students joining by using this address will be able to access the exercises whenever they access the session. For the sake of this training session, we're nearing the end. So what do we do when the session is finished? If we don't want our students to be able to enter the session again, we can choose this option from the teacher menu. It's called End Session. It means our students won't be able to enter the session anymore. We can, for example, close the session for the night if we want. So for the time being, I'm just going to end this session now. And now here we can see that the session has ended. Let's go back to the session dashboard. We can access the session dashboard from the teacher menu right here. Now, since we ended that session, we're going to find it in the Ended tab right here. So here's our basic training session. We can still go in as a teacher and listen to the student submissions and review them if we want. We can also easily reopen that session so it's available again.